It's nice and yeah, that's nice. Oh, no. No, no, no. Come on. There we go. Stop. Good. Okay, so we're gonna freeze there. Good. So I think we can lock things in right now, and, uh, I believe hold on. Finally, yes, we can get going. Malachi, could you just shut the door there, please? And I'm gonna try and stay here like a good disc jockey at my little spot and run some music. The music of learning and knowledge and coming together. Welcome everyone to Short History of the World. And oh, just finally, I know there's one thing I've missed. Do this exactly. Final tech check, just to make sure. All good in the cosmos? Can hear me clearly? Yes? Ebenezer? Good. Okay. I knew there was one final thing I had to press. Great. Okay. So, welcome everyone to our sixth class of the semester, Short History of the World, in which we are going to continue to look at awakenings of power, and we're going to pick up the story from where we left off last week. And we are going to spend quite a bit of time getting into a really important part of awakening to a new force in our story. And it's not religion and it's not God. That was in the past. That was last week. Today, it's largely about science, awakening to the power of real free thinking and modern thinking. And I'm going to be showing you a lot about ancient Greece, which is a part of the world and a culture that is so important, including the golden age of Athens around 2,500 years ago, which you may have heard about, but you're going to understand more of what Athens represented in the story of humanity and why Athens eventually fell, why this remarkable golden age that has been called the lamp of humankind by some world historians lasted so briefly and then eventually would fall to the Romans. And I will look at that next week when we enter a new chapter called Spells of Our God Kings, and that will be an important exploration, principally of the Roman world. And so you're going to be getting in the next two classes, as we look at Awakenings of Power, Part 2, Spells of Our God Kings, Part 1, a real good understanding of the Greco Roman world in human history. But please keep in mind that, as fascinating as this period is, in all of civilization, it is not all of humanity. It's what we would call the Western world, not the Eastern world. And you're going to see through the lectures in the next 2 days, or I should say the next two classes, the context, the fuller context. So you'll understand something about, of course, the Greco Roman world, but then China and India and the Americas and Africa, and all of that will become the more global context for you so that you can really put this entire story into the planet wide view that we take in this class. So I think you're going to find that these two chapters, particularly today, is deeply inspiring in what it says about human beings and what we're capable of. And maybe you will begin to see what our purpose is on this planet. And that's something that is there in every single class and every lecture that I have given this semester, which is, why are we here? What are we supposed to be doing here? Why did we have this good fortune, this miracle, if you will, of being the ones to evolve the human brain? What are we going to do with that intelligence? What are you going to do with your intelligence in your life? Are you going to waste it? So anyways, that's a little bit of what's coming. But first, I just want to make sure everybody's good, and I'm going to check in with everyone because you can see something's different today. Okay, and that is the tech is working better. And if you can focus a little bit on the onboard names that have been put there right now, we have Ryden on board in person in the spaceship global classroom. We have Carol, Malagai, Thomas, of course, who did the great work last week with the kind of emergency camera work, but in the end, you really made it look good enough that I would almost want to ditch all of this tech and go handheld. But this is the better way right now, Thomas. I want to give you a chance to focus on the content. Okay. So, but it was really, really good. And Jack is here. Great to see Jack on the couch. Maya. Hi, Maya. Me, of course, Tech Working is one of our other characters. Today I call Tech Working. That's the name of Tech Working. And then, of course, there's Cole. Hi, Cole. Cole's just behind the couches right now. And for all of you, just so you can see in person, there's the, let me get the, come on in, the YouTube view for the in-person students here. So they can see what's going out to the rest of the world, as well as what is being, oops, actually recorded. So let me just tee that up and refresh our live stream. There we go. So that is what the rest of the world is seeing. And then maybe eventually in time, people will find us on YouTube and we will see coming into the live chat. As you can see, I've invited the rest of the world to join our conversation, but nobody's there in the live chat. That's okay. Not a problem. We get our high definition recording this way. That's why I do this. But this is all in aid of saying there is an experiment happening in this room from an educational standpoint in terms of making the classroom a lot more 21st century like. And so today you're going to see, for example, not only are we now able to fix some of the tech problems here. I've been working closely with IT this week, spent hours in the room earlier in the week. I'm going to meet with them again today. But the other thing that you will notice today is the audio of the students speaking is going to be much better. And here's what I'd like all of you to see what's going to happen, okay? And you're going to see why this nucleus is so important going forwards. We're going to be passing the microphone around. That's how we're going to talk. So, Ryan, do you want to take the mic again? Just go grab the mic. Everybody can see right now. Ryden's going to get in and grab a seat. You can take in and just turn it on, okay? And speak like it's karaoke. And we're just going to talk for a second. And I'm just going to talk to Ryden, do a little bit of audio testing, so you can see that Ryden and hear Ryden's voice clearly. So Ryden, what are you hoping we kind of cover when it comes to the Greco-Roman world when we start to look at it? What would you like to look at?
I guess I'm curious about their religious practices and how they form such a strong economy.
How they form such a strong economy. Interesting. Good. You have an economic financial question. Good. So in the cosmos, just go ahead on the live chat right now. Did everybody hear Ryden clearly? Just put a yes in there, okay, if you did. Good, okay. So the idea is that when a student speaks and wants to speak, the student hands the microphone to the other student. And ideally, all students will be sitting in the couches because from a practical standpoint, it means it's easy to pass the microphone around. The student doesn't have to reach back or reach over there. But again, it puts pressure on students who don't want to be sitting on the couches to come into the couches. So I'm just going to say to Maya and to Cole, if you don't want to be on the couches, that's okay. All right? I don't want to put extra pressure on you. However, in order for you to benefit from the full educational experience here, not just in learning about history, but in interacting in person with your peers and developing your communication skills, I highly recommend that you come onto the couches and be prepared to speak. Okay? But if you feel uncomfortable doing that, I can't force you. I can only tell you why I've set this up the way it is, and then you decide if you want to do that. Okay? So hang back. That's fine. So right now, what we have is in the nucleus, we have Malachi, we have Carol, we have, again, it's oh, go put your name up there, and then I'll read it from the. What is it again? It's Victor Deshevsky. Thanks. Yeah, sorry, Victor. Victor's going to put his name on board. So we have Malachi, Carol, Victor. Of course, we have Ryden, we have Thomas, we have Jack, and we're going to be moving the microphone around. And then we'll try and move the microphone to Maya and to Cole if they want to speak. Okay? Fair enough. Great. The next thing is that for those of you in the Cosmos live online right now, if you want your full participation marks, easy participation marks, this is what you need to do. You need to unmute your microphone and your camera. So you want the full marks? Let's see who takes that challenge right now.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got, excellent. We've got the audio, and that's good. Are we able to, and you don't have to, okay, because I understand where you may be with your camera. Are you able to unmute your camera? Let's see. And here's the reason, okay, here's the reason. If the vision for this entire class is going to work really well for everybody, believe it or not, there we go, believe it or not, and I know what I'm talking about because I've been a television producer. I produce television shows and many things. You can go on YouTube and you'll see as a production company and, you know, many things. So I understand what we're doing here. Actually, the most important part of this class is the YouTube recording. Take a look for a moment at YouTube, okay, right now. Why do I say that? Well, first, this class is fully flexible. You can join different ways. There are 111 students enrolled in this class over 2 cohorts, almost fully booked up to, I think there's a limit of 120, but 111. As you know, most students don't come in person, but but you don't have to. But there's a group that are motivated and they want to be here, and sometimes you come and go. They are the driving power of this class, and it's a bit like a television show. Our conversation, our exploration of world history together is then live streamed for anyone else, as you know, and notice where all the icons are, the thumbnails are. I've worked with our video conferencing system that we've been developing so that it's horizontal behind the couches. If we can see everybody's faces, it would be great, because then it would look like on YouTube that these people who are online are kind of in the class more. You see how their faces are, the icons are behind the couches? But you don't have to, okay? As long as the audio is connected. And then if we can succeed in doing that, what we're demonstrating in a revolutionary way, I believe, to the rest of the world is humanity is ready to open up classrooms. That's what's happening here in this room. And with your help and your interest, if we have a great conversation and exploration together, then that's what gets recorded. And everybody can access that later for their asynchronous participation. So for now, I'll just say the person who is online at the moment with their microphone is Ebenezer. Ebenezer?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Great. Okay, so we know we're going to, and he'll be available live. Okay, and that way we can bring him in. And there you go. Okay, so essentially we can start, and I'm going to get the lecture going, and then we'll have an activity. But does anybody have any questions? Does anybody feel like they don't understand what's being done in this room and they would like to know more? Or do they have any ideas on how to make it better in what we're doing? If there's anything you'd like to say, please feel free, okay? And you can also put it in the live chat as well, because I see it here. Ebenezer, do you have any questions today?
No.
Were you able to get your first assignment in last night?
Yeah.
Way to go. Okay. Malachi, first assignment in. Great. Victor, good. Okay. Remember, everyone gets one extension this semester, okay? But no more. So you can have it, and you can have it till Sunday. But after that, you won't get an extension at all for anything the rest of the semester. Okay, just be aware, okay, and that may be something that starts to kind of put some pressure into you as we hit the final assignment, which is worth 30% at the end, and it's a big one. So just be aware, okay? Good. I'm always here to help. Ryden, were you able to get it in? Great. Maya? Great. Thomas? Good. Jack? You're good for the first assignment? Way to go. Okay. If you don't have any more questions, or if there's nothing you'd like to say, I'm going to start the next chapter of the story. And I'm just going to do a little bit of a stick handle here so that everybody can see something nice and clearly. And that is what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the presentation here, and then I'm going to make this full screen so it looks really cool. Because the idea is go on tech, you can do full screen, you will default. Nice, nice. So the idea is that ultimately, if I can succeed with this experiment that we've been doing in education, make sure you mute your microphone, Ebenezer. There might be something there, or it might be me. Anyways, we're good with audio. If this really works, then the experience of this lecture will feel a little bit like a movie, too. You're sitting on couches, or you're watching at home. You're looking at a $500,000 video wall, which breaks down all the time, but we're fixing it, okay? But in terms of what I've tried to prepare for you so that you experience this, it feels a bit like a movie if everything's working, but it's a classroom. But from a multimedia standpoint, it should feel big. The images should be good, but critically, it's what we do together and talk about that's most important. So let's continue. The Story of Humanity, Awakenings of Power, Part 2. And let's just do a little bit of a review. And then we're going to launch into the rest of this chapter, culminating with, I hope we have time today to do my reading from the last days of Socrates. How many of you are familiar with the name Socrates? You must be. You've heard that name before, okay? And online, just so that I can kind of see if you're listening right now, just put some digital hands and let's see what happens. You must know who Socrates is, or you've heard the name. Online, go ahead, and I will see that on my second computer. Great, okay. We'll get to that. But in 399 BCE, before the Common Era, Socrates, maybe the most famous philosopher in all of human history, had to make a choice about how he would die. And what I'm going to do at the end of today's lecture, in building towards this idea of awakenings of power, building towards the idea that you are not awake to your own power. That's what Socrates and others in ancient Greece told us. You are not awake to your own power. He had a choice. And this eyewitness account by his student, Plato, who was another ancient philosopher whom you know. It goes in this line: Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. They all went in that line. Socrates was the teacher of Plato. Plato was the teacher of Aristotle. Aristotle then went and was hired by Alexander the Great to become his teacher in Macedon before Macedon conquered Greece. The point is, Socrates was the first great free thinker in terms of philosophy, and he had a choice at the end of his life. He was forced to make a choice, and Plato documented this. Should he kill himself because the Greek state has told him he should? Or should he renounce his views, his revolutionary views, and say he was sorry for destabilizing the Greek state just after they'd lost a great war called the Peloponnesian War, and he was faced with a choice. And I'm going to tell you what he chose. But Plato documents this in an eyewitness account when Socrates was in prison in 399 BCE, just outside of Athens, and he had to decide what to do. You may know what the result is, but wait till you hear this eyewitness account of this person who introduces us to the idea of free thinking in a way that no one has. And we need to get to that point to understand why he would choose what he did. So, Dryden, I hope I can touch on some of the religious and economic aspects that you mentioned. I kind of do, but we'll probably get more into that in the Roman world. Today, it's just about the Greek world largely, and I need to get you there. But I just want to also tell you something about a video that I had up on the big board, and now it's frozen behind me because it represents something else that's important today. Ancient Egypt, which this video chronicles, was a place that we visited and touched on last week. And I'm just going to review a little bit of what we did. If you remember last week, when we began to look at this power of sort of a single God and the idea that humans had begun to think of a single God. And then Akhenaten, the Egyptian pharaoh, had begun to develop this idea of worshiping the sun. We touched on the idea of how important the pyramids were in ancient Egypt. And this documentary actually shows, it's called Saqqara. It's an area in Egypt today, in an area called the Valley of the Tombs. It's actually a slightly different place than all the pyramids are, but there are some pyramids close to there. And in this documentary, you will see archaeologists of today going into a tomb and discovering something. And it's a fascinating documentary. But what I'd like to point out to you that's important about today is the people in that documentary are practicing scientific or archaeological exploration. And this idea that we humans can figure things out if we just apply common sense and we explore, this is science. And we're going to see this unfold today much more clearly in terms of giving us power. But I'm going to leave this frozen frame up there right now. Saqqara is the most important archaeological site in Egypt because what it represents today, just in terms of an image, is the idea that we humans today live by science. We live by technology. Religion is important, but not as important as science and technology in our lives. Those are three huge forces. They give us power: religion, science, and technology. But where did these ideas come from in terms of science? Well, they come from humans wanting to know what is the truth. They come from humans today wanting to know what's in that tomb over there. And so I'm just going to, if it just doesn't go to sleep, great. I just have to juggle a few things. So let me just breeze through last week. The giant in the story of Awakenings of Power is the Greek historian Thucydides. And we're going to be hearing more from Thucydides today because he chronicled this very important war called the Peloponnesian War between the Spartans and the Athenians. The Athenians lost and the Spartans won. And many of you may be familiar with this culture called the Spartan culture. It's militaristic. It left very little to humanity. It didn't build much, but what it did leave are ideas around military culture and defending yourself by the sword through war. Thucydides was an eyewitness to this war and wrote about it. These are the chapters that we've been exploring so far. And as we move forwards, I would like to get a scribe to go over to the board today. And Maya, Thomas, you want to do it? Excellent. Okay, great. Unless Maya wants to do it. Would you like to do it, Maya? Let Thomas do it then. Or hold on. You're not, but you haven't done it, right? I just want to give every, it's okay. We can help you, okay, Maya? So have you been up there on the board yet? Okay, so I'm just going to go. Do you know how to move the cards, Thomas? Can you show Maya? Yeah, just Thomas is going to show Maya. Start a new card, okay? And we'll write down Awakenings of Power so we can get the notes going. When we talk about Awakenings of Power, we're talking about the force in the human story that has enabled us to leave planet Earth. There is no other creature that has ever walked this planet, that has ever left this planet. We might say the dinosaurs were, because the dinosaurs, over time, transitioned one branch of it into birds. We're learning more and more about how dinosaurs had feathers. There was a branch of the dinosaurs, and over millions of years, they eventually were able to become airborne. And so, in a way, we could say that when we talk about flying and leaving the planet, it might be more accurate to say that humans, along with birds, who once were dinosaurs, are the only creatures that have left the planet. But dinosaurs did not have science. We do. And that's enabled us to begin to leave the planet. Last week, you saw this idea in action. Alfred North Whitehead, the world dreams of things to come and then in due season arouses itself to their realization. That idea that we humans were dreaming of more for ourselves, more for our societies, more for our way of governing ourselves, and that freedom and free thinking and the free moral conscience that brought Abraham into our story. Abraham, the great first prophet of the three monotheistic religions, the human that brought to us the idea of a single God. There had not been a single God yet in the human story. Now we started to have that idea of God, and Abraham and his ideas will then grow into Judaism. Judaism will grow into Christianity. Christianity will grow into Islam. Those are the three religions in the world that have a single God at their core. But then there are many others in a much more global context. Hinduism, Sikhism, Buddhism, indigenous myths, they all have their religious and spiritual stories. But the ones that are perhaps most relevant to the world right now are the ones that brought us this idea of a single God. Because every person in this class, I guarantee you, even if you come from somewhere else in the world, probably feels that there is a God. There's something. And it's this overarching, omniscient power that gives us this thing called life and humanity. And that's a construct. Humans created that because they were curious to know. And that's what Abraham brought us. Okay. And we touched on that last week. Last week, we then looked at this idea of Abraham being tested, his faith being tested. In these religions, almost in all religions, the idea of sacrifice is critical. Abraham was being asked in a test of faith, which Ryden understood. I think I remember Ryden, you said, test of faith, you're absolutely right. He was being asked to sacrifice his child to show that he's ready to follow this word of God. And you saw that at the end, he didn't have to sacrifice him. There was an angel that came down and said, "It's okay, Abraham, I believe you. You are devout enough. You don't have to sacrifice your son." But we also saw last week that an Egyptian pharaoh, Akhenaten, also began to think of this idea of a single entity, but not God. It was the Son. And I think the note taker last week may not have gotten this down entirely accurately. But maybe she did. Alex is not with us today, and I don't know if she's online. I'm not sure if I'm the one who's incorrect here, Alex, but in the notes, you said that the new faith that Akhenaten was bringing in Egypt was the worship and the importance of the Son, as in the Son of the Father, and that there might be a Christian connection. If that's what you meant, because I think you spelled it S-O-N in the notes, I meant S-U-N, Son, as in worship of the Son up there, the celestial body. Okay, so I just want to make that clear that this is what Akhenaten was saying. We saw that in Egypt, this great civilization that lasted for 4,000 years, just south of Mesopotamia and ancient Sumer that we had touched on earlier, that these two, Akhenaten and Nefertiti, the two of them became very important figures in early Egyptian civilization because they were considered progressive. Here was Akhenaten worshiping the sun, not Akhenaten worshiping himself, the god king. And here was Nefertiti, a woman being given the chance to rule too in this ancient city and ancient empire that it would become. And so this tells you something, that in the story of humanity, we're starting to open the door. Humans are starting to open the door, as Alfred North Whitehead said, to this newer ideas that come from freer thinking, that maybe humans aren't the only ones on Earth. Maybe there's something else. The sun, the moon, a god, something bigger. And we're just smaller. And we need to understand what those bigger things are to understand the whole picture. Is it making sense? It's the opening the door, as Alfred North Whitehead would say, to freer thinking. Malachi, make sense? Great, okay. And this was the last image last week where we ended. Good, Maya. There's something bigger out there. Just whenever you, I want to just point out something. I'm going to bring the camera over to Maya to just show you how important it is. What she's doing right now, the camera is on Maya. If I had this full screen, everybody can see this online. Okay. Maya, I just want to tell you that you are doing something that's so critically human. You are thinking for yourself. You are processing something I'm saying, but you're not obediently and slavishly writing it down. You're thinking, and then you're writing it down. Keep going, okay? So you may not notice that, all of you, but let me just bring that back. And she's using the power of writing to do that. You're seeing how important writing is to transmit knowledge. So last week, we ended at around, in terms of our story right now, we are at about 3,500 years ago. And it is the moment when another prophet emerged in a place called Egypt. His name is Moses. Moses had lived in the court of an Egyptian pharaoh. And Moses did what Abraham did. Through his free moral conscience, he decided, I'm going to leave this place of God kings. Akhenaten's reign only lasted briefly. After he and Nefertiti ruled, then Egypt went back to its old ways. And Moses was witness to those old ways. And he said, there's something else, something greater for humanity. I'm going to take my people, my new people, the believers in one God. These are the Jews, the first believers, the first true believers in one God. He's going to leave Egypt, part the Red Sea, as the scriptures tell us, and walk all the way into the Sinai desert. And he's going to wander in the wilderness for 40 years, the way Abraham did. And now we're going to see a new power develop. I'm still with religion, but I'm just about to end with religion and move into Greece and science. But you need to understand this part. When Moses wandered in the Sinai desert with his followers, wanting a better life that was divorced from this idea of the God King, something in which we humans could be saved and secured by our belief in this single God who loves us and cares for us. He was given a set of commandments. This is new for humanity. Moses went up a mountain, Mount Sinai, and he went to receive the word of God. And he was given commandments, 10 commandments. He came back down the mountain. Always these prophets, these free thinkers, these new figures in the story, they often go to mountaintops and they go to caves and they go to epic natural landscapes to commune with some higher power. And in this case, Moses was given these commandments. He came down the mountain. He had these commandments on tablets. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not do several things. And if you don't do those things, if you follow those commandments, you will be pure, you will be good, and you will have a good life. There's no mention of a king in here or an emperor. If you follow these rules, if you follow this law, these are the tablets giving humans their first laws. If we all follow these laws equally, we will have just and good lives. We don't need to have the God with his family of powerful people, and we are serving that person. We simply have to follow these commandments. And if we do that all together, we can live just, good, healthy lives. When he got to the bottom of the mountain with these tablets, he saw that all of his people had gone back to their old ways. In the scriptures, we say they were worshiping idols. They were worshiping like cults. People things. They had lost their connection to that greater power. That's what we say when you worship idols. Today, we would say the cult of celebrity, for example, the cult of Donald Trump, for example, the cult of any person that you would worship is an idol. And according to these laws and this belief, this is destructive. So what happened with Moses when he saw that his people were worshiping, he dropped the tablets on the ground. He was so angry, and they broke. And the people all looked at him, and he said to them, if you do not learn how to follow these commandments and maintain this covenant with our higher power, with these, you will be destroyed. You will suffer. So the people stopped worshiping the idols. This is the story. Moses went back up the mountain again. He got the tablets again. He walked back down, and now there was a people believing in something new. Always we're being challenged, but this is giving us a new power. Do you see how? By having a set of laws, set of commandments, instead of a God king ruling over us, that this might liberate us somehow? Do you have that sense or not? I want to make sure you understand this point. It may liberate us, but let me move on for a second so I can, whoops, I've hit the wrong key here. Let me come back to, it just needs, the computer's a little slow. I'll come back to this. I'm going to stop on the story of religion, move to science now, but I want to just make sure, and we're going to move the microphone around. Malachi, do you want to, Ryan, do you want to give the microphone to Malachi, and let's see what Malachi thinks, okay? Way to go, Maya. Keep going. Turn it on. Is it on? Yeah? Hold it like karaoke.
Yeah. Is it on?
Malachi, maybe I haven't explained it clearly enough, but I want to make sure you understand. Do you see how this new way of thinking that I've shown through Moses and these commandments is maybe beginning to liberate us from something?
Yeah, it's giving us purpose. Especially as a Christian, the Ten Commandments is really important.
Yes.
But this also goes to what you're trying to teach. When Jesus comes, it's not the Ten Commandments that make us pure. It's finding God Himself.
Yes.
Rather than, it's not your actions, it's your actual faith, which is also what I believe.
Yes.
I believe you should try to follow it, but knowing as humans, we're not going to be successful all the time. That's my main thing.
But if you were to worship or believe in this single human man, the God King, a pharaoh in Egypt was considered a God King, and you were given the choice. You can believe in him and everything that he decides for me, I will follow, or I can believe in this new way of thinking in which there isn't a pharaoh and a king, but there's this set of laws, and if we all believe in that, then that will be our purpose. Which would you choose?
I feel like it matters on the person. For me, I believe I should follow a higher purpose, which is following what I deem perfect.
Yes.
But for them, probably at the time, they're probably thinking, it's better I don't want to follow other people because I'm already following the laws of the land. Why
Yes.
something else, right? So they would rather teach themselves how to be perfect rather than look at perfect and try to be that because they try to be their own independent self.
Try to be your own, exactly. Do you see how the idea of a freer moral conscience, like freer thinking, is leading us to these new ideas?
Yeah, I can see
That's very important. Victor, do you sense that too? Okay. Do you want to hand it to Victor? Just want to make, you don't have to answer if you don't want to, okay? But I just want to make sure, and then we'll go over to Thomas, okay? And think about, do you see how this way of thinking that Moses and Abraham and the religious prophets are bringing us are giving us a new way of thinking that gives us somehow more freedom?
Yeah, I can see that.
And you see that those ideas are coming from human beings inventing and thinking more freely. And as they do, they give us new ideas. Do you see that?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Do you want to hand it to Thomas? Okay, we'll come back to Ryden and Thomas. What are your thoughts on this idea of that we are beginning to slowly liberate ourselves, we humans?
Um,
Karaoke, just so they can hear you. Okay, yeah.
um, I like the idea that we're slowly liberating ourselves. It's interesting. I mean,
Hmm.
obviously, um, it's interesting that we're doing it through religion and belief, and not war or conflict. as we're
Yes,
doing
good point. Excellent point. Excellent point. Make sure we get that nice, Maya, and good. The handwriting is fine, and even if the spelling's wrong, I can correct it later, okay? I wasn't even planning to address that, but now that Thomas has said it, it is something that will come into our story later when we look at war much more closely, particularly with the Romans, but also with the Greeks. That war is not where all the important things happen in history. In fact, many of the most important things have nothing to do with war. The reason why you might think that war is central to our understanding of history, because that's probably what you've learned generally. You know, you got to study the wars, the First World War, the Second World War, go back to, the Crusades, if you will, or a civil war, go even earlier to the great warriors in history. The reason is because the winners of those wars often were the ones who had the ability and the will to write the history, and they gave us their accounts. We often say about history, every page of victory. Who cooked the feast? Who cooked the feast for the victors? Every 10 years, a great man. Who paid the bill? I want you to remember this. It's a wonderful statement about history given to us by Bertolt Brecht, philosopher in the 20th century. So much of history is about great men and great wars. And you may think that's where we get our important ideas. No, but they tend to be the ones who've written the most, accounted for their deeds. Julius Caesar, for example, he was a huge writer, and he wrote so much about his deeds. And so we often say in history, when you look through history, every 10 years, a great man. Every 10 years, a victory. Who cooked the feast for the victors? Let me say this again. Every 10 years, a victory. Who cooked a feast for the victors? So it's saying history is always about war and the victors. Every 10 years, great man. Who paid the bill? Well, there are millions and millions and millions of other humans that have lived. They paid the bill. They were the slaves. They were the ordinary people. They were the people like you and me and others, but they are written out of history generally. Now, today, we know better. And so we bring them into history. Does that make sense? So Thomas is putting his finger on a very good point. And I just wanted to take a little tangent on that, okay, to make sure it was an opportunity. But let's come back, okay, to the power that we want to explore today. Jack, is there anything you want to add, or are you good? You're good? Okay. Maya, every 10 years, a victory. Who cooked a feast for the victors? Every 10 years, a great man. Who paid the bill? That's after. And I'm going to just slightly rewrite that to make it correct, okay? So let's get this down. Watch. I'm going to bring the camera over to Maya for all of you, because this is really important, okay? And then I want to make sure you understand this. Every page of victory, Maya. So write every page of victory. This is the quote. I'm pulling it out of my head right now, okay? Every page of victory. Who cooked a feast for the victors? Ebenezer, why don't you come onto your microphone and tell us if you understand what Maya is writing? Please go ahead. Let's see. Go ahead. Ebenezer?
Yeah.
Good. You see Maya right now. She's writing, okay?
Yeah.
Every page of victory. Who cooked a feast for the victors? Every 10 years, a great man. Who paid the bill? That's the next line, Maya. So there's 2 lines. What does that mean, Ebenezer?
I don't really understand that part.
What's that?
I said I don't really understand the line.
Say that slowly. Go ahead again.
I said I don't really understand the line.
Okay, good. Then we need to make sure he understands. Cole, would you like to explain it? This, what Maya's writing? Let's see. Okay. Why don't you explain it? Thomas is going to explain it. I'll bring the camera back, okay? Please listen, because it was Thomas who began this in the first place. Go ahead, Thomas.
Well, I think it means that.
I can't hear.
Yep, go ahead.
All right. I believe it means that every victory, humans have like experienced is built on the backbone of the people that aren't in the history books.
And history tends to be about war. Cole, I'm saying there's more than war. But the history is built on the backs of people who have often been written out of history. The ones who were written about were the winners, the generals and the emperors and the kings. But history has to include all of us. And history has to include all the other things that are not about war, like religion and like science and like technology. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
Where do these things come from? Great. Ebenezer, is it starting to make sense a little bit more?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay. So, final thought in terms of religion, and then we'll pass the microphone around a little bit more, okay? Human nature without God's grace is not enough. This is just a punctuating thing that I will explain. Arnold Toynbee, another world historian who wrote a lot about the same kinds of civilizational dimensions that I've been exploring, he said, human nature without God's grace is not enough. We are not fulfilled, he was saying. We humans are not fulfilled unless we have some higher power, some recognition of a higher power, a place for this God in our lives. And if we do, it will help to free us. It will make us happier. It will allow us to endure suffering more. It gives us power. It gives us grace. It gives us grace. Enough of religion. You now, I think, have a sense, just an introductory sense, that one of the new powers that had come into the human story was this idea of the belief in one God. But that is really representative of even a bigger belief, which is our religions are starting to develop. we don't need a king or a authority figure in our communities, a male figure to be guiding us. We can be guided by something greater that we don't know, but that is out there and is providing so much of what happens on earth. That is the heart of a lot of religions. But there's another power. When we talk about awakening to power, the power of science is really the one that matters to most of us today in our world. And this is what I'd like to touch on now by beginning to look at ancient Greece and spending the rest of today's class understanding what it was about this place called Greece, this peninsula in the Mediterranean that is so important in our story. You're looking at beautiful stone columns of one of the great monuments that sits atop of the city of Athens today in a place called the Acropolis. Now, I'm just going to stop and ask you all for a moment. And maybe we'll start. Well, Maya is so busy. I don't want to ask Maya to speak. Maya, you're doing some really good notes and just keep going, okay? Whatever you think is important, just put it down. Raise a hand, and those of you online, a digital hand, if you have learned about the importance of ancient Greece in some way in history. Thomas, okay, Malachi, you've ever excellent. Look, Colin's with us today. Great, Colin, are you able to jump on your microphone? Let's see.
Can you hear me?
And we can hear you. Go ahead, Colin. How are you?
I'm all right.
Ooh, are you speaking?
Yeah.
I
are
think
you
you're
hear me?
unmuted, but anyways, okay. I won't. Colin has been very motivated in writing some good things in his discussion posts and his assignment, but I don't hear you, Colin,
Are
for
you able
some
to hear
reason,
me?
and it might just be. Hold on. It should be. We can hear you. Ebenezer, could you just come back, please, and say hello? And I just want to make sure. Yeah. Good. Yeah. So it's Colin's microphone. It's not. Yeah, because Ebenezer's good. Okay. Anyways,
Are you
let
able to
let
hear me?
Move on. All right. We had quite a number of students put their digital hand up. Malachi, Thomas. Malachi, grab the microphone and why don't you tell us why Greece is kind of important or what you've learned about ancient Greece. Go ahead.
I mean, I don't really remember that much about it, but I know that they're influential in like rules of government and wars and fights, uh, and how they advance even modern society in a lot of people's views.
Yes, yes, that's right.
That's the main thing I remember.
Have you heard that it was in ancient Greece that we began to get this idea of democracy?
I somewhat remember hearing
Yeah?
about that. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why I said it's related to modern society.
That's right. That's right. Oh, we have good. A hand is going. Who is that who would like to speak? Somebody
Hi,
would like to speak? Please get
it's
onto your
me.
microphone.
It's me, Ruzan.
Can you
Can
do
you
it?
hear
Go
me?
ahead. Yes.
Yeah, so Greece was the first place where we
You're
got
speaking
like
and again.
we got
It's
philosophers.
interesting. We don't hear you.
Hello,
Ah, okay.
hello,
It might be we heard Ebenezer, but we're not hearing. You're unmuted. I
hello.
don't
Can you hear
know
me?
why we can't hear you. It's Roseanne
Yeah,
again.
yes. Can you hear
We
me?
should be able to hear you clearly. Anyways,
Hello.
okay, I'm gonna have to. You can hear him, Ebenezer. Okay, we can't. Just a second. Go ahead. No, but Ebenezer, can you please get on your microphone for a second? And I need to establish why we can hear you. Oh, yeah, hi. Okay, so you could hear you could hear Roseanne, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, here's what I'm going to say, just so I can move things along. Roseanne, we'd love to hear you, but for some reason we can't. We can hear Ebenezer. I'm going to move on with the lecture, but put your thoughts into the live chat, okay, Roseanne, and we can take this up. If there's anything you'd like to say for the moment, put it in the live chat, and I'm going to move on with the in-person group. Don't know why. Hold on. No, no, we're good there. Okay, anyways, I will explain for the next 10 minutes or so. And what I need to explain is the world map. I'm going to do this in the air, okay? Because I can't get the map up there right now. Imagine the world map, okay? You're looking at the world map right now. I'm drawing it for you. The world map. Over here is the West. Over here is the Atlantic Ocean. And over here is the eastern part. So Western Hemisphere, Atlantic Ocean, Eastern Hemisphere. And as you know, and as you remember, in the Eastern Hemisphere, everything east of the Atlantic Ocean, we start with Europe. And we see up here the Nordic countries, Finland and Norway and Sweden. And we come down, and there's the United Kingdom and Ireland and here. And then there's the English Channel. And we move down, and we have Belgium, and we have France, and we have Spain, we have Portugal, and all these countries are on the western side of that landmass. We tend to call that the West. The West. That's Western Europe. It can be confusing because we say the Western Hemisphere, the Americas, everything west of the Atlantic Ocean. Everything east of the Atlantic Ocean is the Eastern Hemisphere. But in fact, in the Eastern Hemisphere, on the western edge of it, are all those countries, Portugal, Spain, England, that we call the West. And when William McNeill, our great world historian, talks about the rise of the West and the power of the West, he means those countries. Do you follow? This is very important. Why? Because Greece is about to give us the West. The Western world, those countries that I just described, those democratic countries, those freer countries, those countries that have conquered the Western Hemisphere that you will see later when they come over to the Americas, and they will conquer and destroy the indigenous peoples in the conquest in 1492. Those countries will get their ideas and their power at their core from Greece. And we talk about, in terms of the rise of the West in the world, we talk about the rise of the Greco-Roman world. The West, the Greco-Roman world. Greece comes first. Rome conquers Greece. Rome absorbs Greek ideas. It's called Hellenism. We will see Alexander the Great, a figure we all know of. He's going to rise out of a place called Macedon, just north of Greece. He will conquer Greece. He will move his armies across the world, and he will, I'm not going to say steal. It's not steal. He was educated by the Greeks. But he's going to bring all those ideas to the rest of the world. And so everything I'm about to tell you, and everything I'm about to show you, is very connected to our world today. And the ideas that the Greeks gave us have so much to do with the freer thinking, the celebration of the freer thinking that I've touched on already through Moses and Abraham and Akhenaten and others. But now we're going to see an explosion of that freer thinking in Greece. And we, you and I, and everybody else are the direct beneficiaries of this way of thinking. We would not be here had these ideas not been introduced to us. So I urge you to listen closely if you want to understand something about how did we get here like this? How come I'm sitting and teaching or standing and teaching and I can speak so freely? How is it that we can have a woman taking notes and a black man sitting here and a Jew teaching Christians and Muslims and Buddhists? And how could we have such diversity and such freedom? Because of what's starting to happen now in the story. Okay, let me explain. I won't be able to get completely to Socrates, but does anybody have any questions right now that they would like to ask before I just spend a few more minutes, and then I think we should stop and we should try and understand this through a conversation. Nope, not yet. Rome is coming. Okay. When we talk of the map, you have the Atlantic Ocean, Americas. Right? There is a sea that stretches into the Atlantic Ocean. At the edge, just through a little area, through what's called Gibraltar, which is on the tip of Africa, and southern Spain. There's a little opening there. And that sea, the Mediterranean Sea, opens out into the Atlantic Ocean. Try to imagine yourself now. You're going into the Mediterranean Sea from the Atlantic. You're passing through that little channel. Southern Spain is up here. Africa's down there with Gibraltar. And you're entering the great Mediterranean Sea. You keep going along the Mediterranean Sea. When we talk about the rise of the West, the power that's about to come, the story now happens all around the Mediterranean Sea. All around the Mediterranean Sea. And as you move further east towards the edge of the Mediterranean, you will eventually come to what is now Israel and Syria and Gaza and Palestine, and there's Egypt over here, and northern Africa, there's Algeria, and there's Morocco. But then to the north, you have these two peninsulas, the Greek peninsula and the Italian peninsula. The Greek peninsula we call the Peloponnese. And then just west of there is the Boot. You all know the Boot. That's Italy. That's where Rome is going to rise. First, it's going to happen on the Peloponnese, the Greeks. Eventually, these ideas are going to move their way over to Rome, and Rome's going to come and conquer Greece. And all of these cultures, Rome, Greece, Egypt, and the African cultures on the north, like Carthage, they're all going to form this great civilization now that's going to begin to develop and trade with each other, dominated by the Greek ideas. And all of this is happening around 3,000 years ago. You're looking at a very important figure in the story who represents a turning point in this human story that we've been exploring. And I think I should conclude here today just for the sake of time, and I will wait until next week before we get into the Greek philosophers and their ideas. I'd like to ask you something. Right now, there you're looking at a very famous image. It is of an Athenian. Athens was a city-state in the Peloponnese. There were all these different city-states. Sparta, Athens, Corinth, Thebes, all these city-states were spread out across the Greek peninsula, the way the city-states had been spread out across the Mesopotamian world, around the rivers, the way they had been around the Nile River. You remember how those city-states began to form around the rivers? Well, the fascinating thing about Greece is there were no rivers. There were mountains. It was hilly. You had all these independent city states that had formed like little countries. And they didn't really have contact with each other in the same way that Ur and Uruk and Lagash had in Mesopotamia, or Alexandria and ancient Egyptian cities had. You had these city states that were very ferociously independent with different ways. And the one that grew the fastest, that gained the most power, was Athens. Why? What made Athens so important? And why do we say that Athens, this Greek city state, was this lamp of humankind? Well, look at this image and it will tell you something. This is ancient Athens, a picture of ancient Athens in around the 400s before the Common Era, 400s BC, around 2,500 years ago. Let me help you to understand this before I ask you some questions. Please look at this image closely. What you see above everybody are monuments, temples on a hilltop. That's the Acropolis. If you go to ancient Athens today, you will see around this hill, looking up, there is a hill. And on that hill, which is called the Acropolis, were these great monuments we call the Parthenon, for example, and other monuments and temples. And in ancient Athens, the Acropolis was like a citadel. Every city-state, largely, in the Athenian or Greek world had these hilltops where there would be monuments and temples and other things built on top. From a military standpoint, it allowed those people to see what was coming around. It gave you the 360-degree view of what was happening around the land, but it also was an important spiritual center. You would go up to the top of this hill, and this is where you would have so many important religious ceremonies. Beneath the hill in ancient Athens, this is the turning point. Please write this down, Maya. Agora. The Greek word, A-G-O-R-A. Agora. Agora. Please write down this other word, polis. P-O-L-I-S. Polis. Agora. Polis. Well, what are we seeing here? We are seeing the emergence of the polis and the agora. And these two things are absolutely revolutionary in human history. The polis is a city ruled by the people, not the gods, not the kings. The people, the polis. More importantly, the agora beneath the Acropolis is a marketplace. A marketplace. It's no frills. it's blah blah. No, but it's more than that. It's a place where people come together to not just bring food and sell food, but to meet and talk. It's a classroom. It's a place where humanity gathers and they interact. They talk. They listen. They trade. They negotiate. They speak. People come up on a platform and they speak, just like this gentleman is speaking right now. Except he's doing something remarkable. He's very famous. Do you know who he is? Let's see if you can get his name. Ryden's raised his hand. We got to hear this straight from. He might just nail it. Who has the microphone? Thomas, you want to bring it over here? We are seeing a revolutionary figure emerge in ancient Athens, in the Agora, in the marketplace, beneath the Acropolis. You follow, Victor? Good. Who is he?
My guess is Socrates.
Nope.
Oh,
Socrates is coming. This predates Socrates. Let's see. Begins with P. Malachi? Let's see. Who is it? Yes. No. The philosophers are coming in the order I gave you. Socrates, Plato. This is before them. Just a little bit before. You see, this person made it possible for Socrates and Plato and Aristotle to come into Athens and do what they did. There would not have been a Socrates, a Plato, and an Aristotle had there not been this person preparing the soil, the foundation for them. Who is he? Let's go online and see. Good, it got Cole's attention. Excellent. He's right there. Malachi, Victor's listening. Jack, do you know who it is? Okay, let's go to the Cosmos. Who is it, Cosmos? Colin. Put it in the live chat if you know who it is. I can't hear you. Put it in the live chat. Cole, you want to try? Yes, it's Pericles. Colin got it. I'm not going to test Colin on how he got it, but I think he pulled it out of his head because Colin's smart. And I wish he could join us on his microphone, but for some reason, there you go. Would you please write down? There we go. Maya, you're right on top of it. That's great. I want to just spend the last couple of minutes with Pericles, and then we're going to stop, okay? Because we need to talk some more about this. There are people in this story I've been exploring with you this semester who are really important in world history. I've introduced some of them. There are people, there are events, there are developments, there are wars, there are all these kind of milestones in the story of civilization. And I've just given you the tip of the iceberg. Pericles is hugely important. He's at the level of Abraham, but he was not religious. Or Moses. He's at the level of Charles Darwin or Alfred Russel Wallace. And these free thinkers, these important humans that open us up to something new. He was a warrior. He was a fighter. He made a catastrophic mistake. And I will tell you about that, hopefully today. But he did something brilliant. What he did in Athens is he said, a society, if it wants to be strong, if it wants to endure, must have strong ideas. It can't just rely on its military might to dominate. Please listen closely, because what you are witnessing in the United States today is, in a way, ignorance. It's a nation that doesn't understand what Pericles said. Pericles said, if you want people to fight for you, if you want them to go to war for you, if you want them to continue to build a civilization that will last, they must believe in the ideas that they're fighting for. You must love their country or their nation. You can't force them. You have to persuade them. And if you can't persuade them, you cannot build a strong society. They must be treated, the people, as independent human beings who need to be convinced, not like children with a strong hand that you force to do something. Right now, we are witnessing, for example, in many countries, but principally the United States, that you win by force. We will see in the 20th century, there will be dictators that emerge. Adolf Hitler, we all know, but there will be Joseph Stalin in the Soviet Union. There will be General Franco in Spain. There will be Chairman Mao in China. And today we see this playing out in a such grotesque way in the figure of Donald Trump. Everything is force. Everything is take the hammer and just bash people, bash people, bash people until you get what you want. And what we are seeing happening with Pericles is he said, civilization will survive when we move from force to persuasion. And so if you look at this image, Pericles emerged as a leader of ancient Athens. If you look at these people in this picture, let me see if I can zoom in. Yeah, I can. Here is Pericles speaking to the assembled Athenians. Do these people in this image look entirely convinced? Who's this guy sitting here? This guy could be Mr. Troll on social media today. You know, the troll holding his arm up like, I don't believe a damn thing anybody says. They're all idiots. We've seen them in Oshawa. We've seen them in Toronto. You might even know them among your own parents and siblings and friends. Who knows? You may have met a person like this. To hell with everything. This guy's an idiot. But he's listening. Pericles knows that. Pericles has to speak to him like an equal. And if he can't convince him, Pericles is not going to be able to move and build an army and start building new buildings and a society. And so what you're seeing is what Alfred North Whitehead said is so important in the human story. It's going to give us democracy and more freedom. People in a society are not children. People do not want to be forced. People have critical thinking, reason, intelligence, and you must speak to them that way. You must persuade them. And if you can't persuade them, you fail. Do you know that the Athenians developed a system of voting that will become the basis of democracy? And do you know how that worked? I'd love to show you, but I don't know if it's the image right now coming up. No, not yet, but I'll tell you and come to it next week, and I'll end here. Maya, would you write down this word for us called ostrakan? O-S-T-R-A-K-A-N. Ostrakan. You know what an ostrakan is? Colin, do you know what an ostrakan is? Let's see if he knows. He likes this, and he's into history. Colin, do you know what an ostrakan is? Maybe? Well, how many of you are familiar with the television show Survivor? One of the first reality shows, okay, where people go onto an island and they compete against each other. And I think now there's like Naked Survivor. And I mean, there's all kinds of survivors where you go and you survive on an island and you have to defeat everybody in contests. It's like the first reality show. Then came Donald Trump's Apprentice. And at the end of Survivor, there's always this moment where everybody gathers around the pot and names are picked out of the pot and who gets thrown off the island. If your name's on, you get thrown off, something like that. You know where that idea comes from to some extent? The ostrakan. The Greeks, the Athenians in particular, developed a system. It's the first real voting system. An ostrakan is a piece of a pot. It's just a little piece of a pot. You rip up like ceramic. you rip off the pod. And what the Athenians did is they would gather in the thousands and they would write down on this which leader has not fulfilled his responsibilities, which leader should be thrown out of the city, exiled for corruption, incompetence, ignorance, did not serve us. Write his name down, put all those pieces, ostracons, into one big place and start picking them out and seeing whose name occurred the most frequently. He gets thrown out of Athens. There was a general like Pericles. His name was Themistocles. He had been a great warrior, but he had also failed the people. Whose name eventually showed up in a vote the most on every piece, almost every ostracon? Themistocles. He was thrown out of Athens. So what the Athenians started to do is they would throw away, exile the leaders that they felt did not serve them well. Imagine that. Well, have you ever heard of the word ostracize? That's where it comes from. This is what ancient Athens, in particular, that city-state, gave us. Sparta, which I will tell you about next week, which is very different and hated Athens and went to war with Athens and will eventually defeat Athens, is another interesting tale in human history. But I will tell you about that next week. I just wanted to introduce this. I need to then, next week, I'll tell you how the philosophers, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle emerged out of this city, but without Pericles coming in and preparing a city in which people were thinking more freely, those other individuals never would have come to Athens. They were invited to come to Athens to participate in this new free way of exchanging ideas and thinking. And this is the power that is beginning to come to humanity, which is you are not awake to your own power. You are if you stop believing in God's. If you start believing in yourself and your own critical thinking and your own way of looking into things and asking questions about those things and wanting to know how they really work, if you do that, you are awake to your own power. That's what the Greeks are starting to show us. Okay. I'm going to stop. And let's move the microphone around just a little bit. We have a few minutes. Carol, is there anything you'd like to say to us? If you were to explain to us, what do you think is really important today in terms of what we've explored? How would you explain it? You know, in a few words. Want to take the microphone? Try, okay? Turn it on. Go ahead. Just anything that comes to your mind. But just, you know, what do you think is what's happening in the story right now that's really important for humans?
Well, I do forget. I do understand as that many of the civilizations have their own ideas in general way. The Egyptians, in general, the Egyptians represent certain parts of mathematics. They are very good in mathematics in the Egyptians.
They were. The Egyptians were.
And they had special ideas. Now, what no one knows is that the Greeks, when they created the famous Library of Alexandria. They have records of many ideas, especially civilizations from India too.
Oh, yeah.
But
Library of Alexandria. That's coming. That's coming. The Library of Alexandria in Egypt.
sadly, they function. Some of them were also from other parts of Greece too. But sadly, some of, according to many other historians and investigations, they have concluded some of them have been lost. sadly from the
Oh,
burning the fire. of the
absolutely. The fire that destroyed the
of the
library.
sadly, they know who wrote it and they know what it was about, but
Yes.
the evidence was already destroyed sadly.
Yeah.
And many of those videos also from India too. They said they have records to many other things. Now the Romans did copy many of the ideas too from the Greeks,
That's right.
Athens,
That's right.
but not all of them are from not completely what the opposite like the Greeks had record deeply
Okay,
completely.
excellent. Do you want to, excellent. You want to give the microphone to Victor? And Victor, let's do a little bit of a summary, okay? Just in terms of, as you've sat here today, and what I really like is the way all of you largely are here. You're in the Lucas, and you have not been distracted too much. I know it's hard to take in a lot of this information, but you've not been going to your cell phones, your laptops too much. You've been listening, and that's good. We're in person here. But I understand attention spans are attention spans. Even I lose my attention too. But Victor, given what you've listened to today, how would you summarize this in a sort of takeaway today? What's happening in our story?
Like my main takeaway
Yeah.
was that Pericles, he was somebody who introduced like ruling not by force but by making people believe in what you believe in,
Yes.
and then persuading them to follow you that way rather than forcing you to, do what you tell them to do.
Yeah. And do you see how that's different than, let's say, when we saw the early pharaohs or rulers in earlier city states when they were the strong men? Does this seem sort of different somehow?
Yeah, it's definitely different. I think that's what works.
Yeah.
Because people at some point, if you're going against their beliefs and forcing them to do what you want them to do, like at one point they're gonna start resisting, and it's not gonna work. You have to make them believe what you believe and persuade them to your way of thinking.
Yeah.
Right, rather than forcing them to do whatever.
Excellent, excellent. Ryden, do you want to try and sort of summarize takeaway? And then we're going to finish up. We'll go to Thomas, and then we'll finish with Maya. Okay, and Maya can read a few of the notes, and then we'll be done. All right, Ryden?
What stood out to me from this lecture was the foundations of our current democracy being covered, and seeing the people and the voices that went into forming those foundations.
Yeah, the voices, the ideas, forming the foundation of our modern world. We say, yeah, good. Thomas, what do you think? Is Cole? Do you want to try summarizing takeaway? Jack, you're good. Okay, go ahead.
I feel like my main takeaway from today's class, it's got to be how much we've taken away, like not taken, but we've brought from Greece, like even the stuff we haven't talked about today, like tyranny and stuff like that.
Tyranny, yeah, tyrants, tyranny, yeah.
We gain a lot of what we are today from Greece, and that seems really important. Also, the bit about like the war and wars and how wars are heavily impacted by the people that support them or like create them, and
Yes.
the war isn't everything, even though that's how the history books make it.
Sure. No, it's a great line. I actually make sure we get that in the notes. War isn't everything. If I just say that in the future, and I remind students, there's a student, Thomas Jordison, student Thomas Jordison, who once said, war isn't everything. And it's so wise because so much of history makes it feel like war is everything. Think about it. And so it's very nicely put. Just Maya, why don't you take the microphone over to Maya, Thomas, and I'll bring the camera over, and let's so you can see what they're going to be seeing out there. If I can show Maya just too much here, you'll see the camera go over. So Maya, right now, you've got your close-up. Okay, here it looks something like this on YouTube. All right, because we're going to do the final wrap-up. if this computer would only refresh faster. There we go. Okay, that's a few seconds ago. So, Maya, why don't you? We don't have time to go through everything. We've got to end. Just what would you say? Just thinking about all the notes you've taken, stand back for a little bit and say, what's sort of the takeaway today?
Well, I noticed that there was a change from believing in religion to believing in science.
Yes.
I am kind of wondering if that is slowly, if we've gone too far with it now, and that's leading to hyper individualism, which is slowly driving us apart.
Which science?
Hyper individualism, because science, we believe more in ourselves than in higher powers.
That's a very okay. Hold on. I think we can put a question here. Okay, Maya's big question. Could you write this down for us? Okay, Maya's big question. Way to go, because I think she's put her finger on a potential dilemma. Okay, so I think the question is this freer way of thinking going to lead us to a hyper form of individualism that is destructive for humanity? Is that fair, Maya? Yeah, I think that's what you're trying to say, okay? Is this freer way of thinking leading us to a hyper form of individualism that is destructive to society? We're not going to answer that. That's it. But I just want to make sure that for Maya, that's what you're getting at, because I think that's excellent thought. Is this freer way of thinking leading us to a hyper form of individualism that is detrimental to humanity? Well, I'll let you all think about this, and I will save the live chat. If there's anything in the cosmos that would like to, anybody in the cosmos that would like to say something, Ryden just wants to add something, and then we should conclude. Yes. Yep.
Freer way of thinking. I thought it was free from man, not free from God entirely. Am I misinterpreting something?
No. Let me just sorry. My mind was on this because I want you to see this because that's live right now. Can you repeat that? Right in that question.
When we spoke of a freer way of thinking, I thought we were referring to free from man or the man God, not free from God entirely.
That's true. That's true. So this is suggesting, well, would you make sure that you put that question into the discussion board today? Okay, because I need to explain that and we're running over and I want to let you go. Okay, but we're on to what I really think is important is you're making connections between the past and the present. And this is very good. This is exactly what you should be doing in this class. So I like that. I can't answer that right now, okay? But there is an answer to that. Okay, so everyone, thank you very much, as always, for being patient with the tech. I look forward to reading and marking your first assignments this weekend and everything else. And I will see you next week, okay? And for those of you in the cosmos, unfortunately, there's something with the microphone, but please, if you have anything you'd like to be addressed, just put it in the live chat right now. I haven't saved the live chat yet, but I will, and I will review it. So Bella, and I see Zohair, Samar, Rosan, Marco, Ayan, I think it is, Ebenezer, Colin, of course. If there's anything you'd like me to remember, put it in the live chat now, and I will save it and review it later, okay? Thanks. Okay, I'm going to mute the microphone here. Yep, till Sunday. Okay, but there's only one allowed for the whole semester, okay? Yeah, that's fine. Victor's, okay? Sunday night, okay?